All right, folks, the time is 1 p.m. Eastern. Let's get started. I know we have a couple of participants on the call. As we speak, more and more people are joining in. So, hello everyone, and thank you for joining. My name is Talha Iqbal, and today we're going to talk about endpoint detection and response in 2026 and how to contain threats in minutes. Before we get started, please note that live interpretation is available. I'll leave this on the screen so you can go under Teams settings, choose interpretation language using the pop-up, and then click on the interpretation language, choose your preferred language as French if you are looking to get the webinar delivered in French, and then click confirm. We'll give the folks a minute to go in and select the interpretation language if they want the delivery to be in French. All right, with that said, once again, thank you for joining our session. Again, my name is Talha Iqbal, Director of Cyber Intelligence Center at Bell Cyber, which is our 24/7, 365 security operations center. Joining me today is Janart, one of our solutions architects specializing in EDR and critical security technologies. We'll be walking you through endpoint detection and response in 2026, how to contain the threats in minutes. We'll start by covering the 2026 threat landscape. We'll look at how cyber attacks have evolved over the years and created a growing speed gap, and we'll explore the shift from legacy antivirus to modern EDR solutions. What's important is we'll reflect upon the business value of getting things right. Now, Janat will take over in between and walk us through what sub 5 minute containment looks like in practice. He's going to talk about AI shaping the EDR world in 2026, and we'll share some insights on real world examples that brings everything we talk about together as one deliverable outcome. Now, the core message we want to leave you with today is simple. Today, it is not enough to detect threats. We need to be able to detect, investigate, respond, and contain them before they become business impacting incidents. So with that said, let's get started. Let's quickly take a look at our agenda for today. As I mentioned earlier, we'll start with the 2026 threat landscape. We'll talk about why the current environment is facing security challenges and rethink how security teams defend endpoints. We'll then look at cyber attack evolution and the speed gaps. Basically, attackers are moving faster than traditional humans can respond. So human-led response models cannot keep up, and we need to change that. From there, we'll cover the shift from legacy antivirus to modern EDR. This is a no-brainer. Signature-based protection alone is no longer enough. And next, we'll talk about 5 minute to containment. What 5 minutes to containment means, why it matters, and what has to come together operationally to make that possible. After that, we'll look at the AI in EDR, how AI is changing detection, investigation, and response across major EDR platforms. We'll then bring it all together with a real-world example on how fast detection and containment looks like in practice. Before we close, we'll also touch upon the business value, because the goal here is not just better security tools, but reducing downtime, limiting business impact, and protecting the business, reducing the overall risk. And finally, we'll have some time at the end for some Q&A. Feel free to put your questions in the chat. Now, as we go through this presentation, keep in mind that the key theme is simple. In 2026, the advantage doesn't go to organizations that can detect. The advantage lies with organizations that can detect, investigate, and contain the threat faster than the attacker can move laterally within their environment. Now, let's start with a number that should concern every security leader. And that's the first item here, 4 minutes and 29 seconds. Now, that was the average time reported by CrowdStrike in their 2024 threat intelligence report. And that's the average breakout time. Now, breakout time is the window from when an attacker first gains access to a system to when they're moving laterally to another system. 4 minutes and 29 seconds. Keep that in mind. And note that this was 2 years ago, which means that it is faster than most security teams can even acknowledge an alert. Now, combine that with IBM's cost of a data breach. Now, in 2024, IBM reported that cost of a data breach is averaging around $4.9 million, and that's USD. And the average time to detect and contain a breach without modern EDR is 304 days or 10 months. So if you don't have a next generation modern EDR solution and you rely only on legacy AV tools, 304 days or equivalent to 10 months to detect and contain a threat. Now that's the gap we're trying to close from 10 months to 5 minutes. And that is exactly why legacy endpoint protection tools, legacy antivirus is no longer enough. So the question is, why can't traditional antivirus deal with all of this, right? And it comes down to fundamental design problem. Your legacy AV, they're built around signature matching. Your legacy AV, they maintain a library of known malicious files, hashes, and when a file matches any of those signatures, it triggers an alert, quarantines the file, and blocks the action. Now, this worked reasonably well 15 years ago when malware was relatively static. Today, it's essentially useless. Why? Because of sophisticated nature of attacks. And here's why. Roughly 75% of today's attack are fileless malware or threat actors using legitimate system tools, what we call living off the land. The attacker, they never drop a malicious file. They simply use built-in utilities like PowerShell, certificate utility, WMI, Windows HTML applications. These are tools that are built into Windows. Attackers, they use them to execute their attack chain. Now, because there's no file, there's no signature to match. Now, keep in mind, legacy antivirus have zero visibility into your memory, into process behavior, into network telemetry to identify lateral movement. Legacy antivirus simply watches a file. If what the file hash is matches a known attack vector, known malicious file, it blocks it. Otherwise, it will continue to let it run. It will not monitor what connections they're making. It will not monitor how they're behaving relative to normal baseline activity. The organizations that got hit the hardest by ransomware over the last few years, they weren't unprotected. They simply did not have a next generation AV tool or next generation EDR tool. They had a legacy antivirus. They had firewalls, but what they were lacking was behavioral visibility, behavioral response, and automated response, which would have caught and contained the attack before it could spread. Now, over the years, the threat landscape itself has evolved in ways that makes it worse. Ransomware has become a service industry, and this is not news to anyone. You don't need a sophisticated programmer to deploy ransomware anymore. You subscribe to a ransomware as a service platform, you pay a percentage of your ransom proceeds, and the infrastructure is handed to you. Now, nation state attackers are also using commodity tooling that's indistinguishable from what criminal groups use. If you look at supply chain attacks, right, in the era after SolarWinds, it is clear that even trusted software can be an attack vector. And attackers are going after identity. They are going after MFA attacks, MFA fatigue, MFA bypass. They're launching adversary in the middle phishing campaigns. They're capturing session tokens. They're bypassing endpoint entirely. And this is exactly why we need an EDR solution to be integrated into your overall security tech stack, into your identity, into your network, and into your cloud telemetry. So the question organizations need to be asking isn't, will we be targeted? It's how fast can we respond when we are under attack? And that's the mindset shift at the heart of everything we're talking about today. Now let's address the hard truth. Human speed security is no longer enough. It's not news that hackers are using Gen AI to move faster, adapt faster, scale faster than any traditional security operations were ever designed for. Legacy security operations cannot keep up with next generation attack vectors. Legacy security operations were not designed to automate and detect reconnaissance, to identify malicious behavior on an endpoint, whereas attackers are accelerating exploit development. Attackers are creating polymorphic malware that changes on the fly to escape or to evade static detection. Now, at the same time, the window between initial access and lateral movement keeps shrinking. What used to take hours can now happen in minutes. So when a SOC analyst is still acknowledging an alert, responding to a ticket, reviewing the logs, they're trying to understand if this is a true positive or a false positive. They're trying to understand the impact. It's already too late. The attacker may already be moving from one initial compromised system deeper into our network. So in theory, your defenders, they need to observe, orient, decide, and act, right? But in practice, a human analyst may need 10, 15, even 30 minutes to fully triage a single high priority alert. Now, against a modern, sophisticated attack vector, that is simply too slow. And that is the real message. If your defense depends on a human being manually clicking approve before containment happens, you're already behind. The attacker is not going to wait for your processes to catch up. They know that they can launch attacks at machine speed. They know that you have multiple approvals, you have to understand the and triage the alert, you have manual processes, and they take advantage of that. Now, that doesn't mean that humans or people are no longer relevant. It means that humans need to help automation, need to drive orchestration, need to incorporate an AI-driven response into their SOC processes. Keep in mind that human judgment is still critical, but the repetitive work of detection, enrichment, correlation, containment, this has to happen at lightning speed. So the takeaway here is simple. Human speed is not just slow. Today, in 2026, it is operationally obsolete. If we want to keep pace with AI-powered threat actors, if we need security operations that can timely detect, analyze, contain threats in minutes, then we need to incorporate automation. We need to replace manual workflow and catch up to mature, advanced, automated processes. Now, last year, CrowdStrike documented a breakout where an attacker moved from initial access to a secondary system in just 51 seconds. Think about that. We previously talked about 4 minutes and 29 seconds. That was 2 years ago. Last year, CrowdStrike reported breakout time 51 seconds. That means an attacker used stolen credentials, gained access to a system, used automated scripts, executed them, and gained initial access into the workstation. They then used the script to pull hash credentials from memory using living off the land technique and hopped into a high privilege server, all within 51 seconds. And recently, we've seen reports from SentinelOne, from Microsoft, confirming that average breakout time has reduced down from 30 minutes to flash attacks, which means fully automated AI-driven attacks, consistently hitting under 90-second mark. So in under 90 seconds, an attacker can gain initial access, laterally move within your environment, get to your crown jewels and exfiltrate data, all within 90 seconds. And yet, organizations are still using traditional antivirus that was built for a very different threat landscape. We are no longer dealing with static malware. We're no longer concerned about hash-based detection. It worked well when malware was more file-based, right? But attackers, they operate differently today. Modern threats are more dynamic. They're using fileless technique. I talked about living off the land binaries. I talked about PowerShell. They're using sophisticated phishing for stolen credentials. They're using tools that are already present on your system. So there is no classic malicious executable, right? Which means legacy AV completely misses today's attack vector. Now, another major limitation is visibility. Your legacy AV might tell you if a file was blocked or flagged, right? But it doesn't tell you the full story. And it's important to understand and have a rich view of processes that were created, command line activity, lateral movement based on network telemetric data, registry changes on a system, or user-driven behavior, right? Which can help incident responders to understand the incident quickly. Now, this is where modern EDR changes the game. Modern EDR gives your security teams continuous endpoint visibility. So not only does it capture telemetry across processes, you get command line executions, you get file details, you get network behavior. So the analyst can not just see something that happened, but also how it happened and what happened after the fact, right? What happened next? Now, EDR, modern EDR, also moves beyond signature-based detection. So what that means is it's no longer looking at, is this file good or bad? It's looking at the behavior of the process chain. Is the behavior abnormal? Is the host behaving in a way that suggests a compromise? Is the host behaving in a way that is not normal baseline for that asset, right? And most importantly, EDR gives your team the ability to respond, right? So it would allow you to isolate the machine, kill a malicious process, quarantine a file. So containment of a threat before it spreads. And in some cases, it allows you to remote into the machine to run some forensics investigation. So in my experience, the biggest difference that organization or team, security teams notice when moving from a legacy AV to the likes of Microsoft Defender, CrowdStrike, or SentinelOne is the conversation shifts. The conversation shifts from what did we detect to what happened on this endpoint? How far did it go? How fast can we contain it? That's the difference between basic protection and modern detection and response capabilities. Now, this is a great example. And last night I was playing around with Gemini and I asked it to create this visual for me. On the left is the old fortress model, right? That's one guard at the gate checking the traffic against a known list of bad signatures. And the problem is that in today's world, polymorphic malware and fileless techniques, they don't line up politely to be recognized, right? They slip through your detection controls because they look brand new, because there's no historical data on that. And on the right-hand side, you see the modern model, right? A command center, which is the EDR, watching every behavior. It's not just a gate. Instead of asking whether a file is good or bad, they look at the behavior. Is the behavior normal, right? And remember, EDR alone is a small but very important piece of the puzzle. You get broader security coverage, right? If you integrate your EDR, and that's where the Bell Cyber advantage comes into play, it's not just about deploying another tool. It's about integrating EDR, integrating your SIM for visibility, for correlation, incorporating a SOAR, security orchestration, automation, and response tool for automated containment, and leveraging the MDR capabilities of 24/7 threat hunting, 24/7 monitoring and response, all enriched and optimized by the use of an AI. The AI makes context-aware investigations. The AI allows faster analysis. The outcome is simple: faster investigation, faster decision making, and containment in under 5 minutes. Now, the real shift organizations notice is when EDR capabilities are integrated with their tech stack, right? Powered by the cyber mesh architecture. Now you can truly move from a reactive model to a proactive, predictive model, right? And this is the difference between simply detecting a threat and actually stopping it before it spreads. Now, I mentioned that speed, it matters because modern attacks, they do not unfold over days like it used to in the past, right? In many cases, once an attacker gains access, they can begin credential theft, privilege escalation, lateral movement, even ransomware staging within minutes, right? And the longer that activity goes unchecked, the more damage it can cause. And a delayed response by your security team can turn a single compromised endpoint into a broader business impacting incident. And this is why containment and fast containment is so important. If security teams can detect suspicious behavior quickly and isolated the impacted endpoint early, they can reduce the attacker's freedom. They can limit the spread. They can significantly reduce the overall impact of that incident. And our target today is that sub 5 minute containment, which means being able to go from detection to host isolation to threat containment in minutes. And that doesn't mean every incident is fully remediated in 5 minutes. We just need to stop the spread, which is where most of the business value lies. Now, with that, I'll hand it over to Janart to talk about 5 minute containment and the use of AI, and talk about some real world examples on how next generation ransomwares are dealt with. Janart, over to you.
Thanks, Taha. So on the slide here, you can see sort of the formula for sub 5 minute containment. So what this depends on are mainly two things: high quality, high confidence detections and well-designed automations. So as we discuss, EDRs like Defender, CrowdStrike, Sentinel-1, and Cortex XDR have increasingly accurate behavioral and AI-driven analytics. This means more alerts you can safely automate against. The flow looks like this. EDR detects a likely ransomware behavior or perhaps a credential theft pattern, and it raises an alert. That alert lands in your SIM, where it's enriched with identity data, asset criticality, threat intelligence, and other useful information. The SIM classifies it as high severity, and then a SOAR playbook would trigger. It would then isolate the endpoint via EDR API, perhaps blocking a malicious hash or domain, and optionally disabling a user account if there's any indication of user account compromise. Then it'll notify the on-call analyst. Many MDR providers now advertise containment in minutes, thanks to this specific pattern. Humans still handle edge cases and tuning, but the bulk of the containment is automated. So let's take a look at this example we see here. First, the EDR detects the threat, which is a credential harvest on a developer's laptop. Next, the alert is immediately sent into the SIM, where the SIM correlates, the correlation use cases trigger and create an incident. For example, if Defender sees a suspicious process on a laptop, that's just an alert. But if our Palo Alto firewalls simultaneously see that same laptop trying to connect to a known malicious IP, perhaps a command and control, in a region your company doesn't operate in, now we have an incident. So the SIM ultimately connects those dots in milliseconds. And then we can take this further using AI to enrich the incident data, increasing confidence in the events to be a true positive. Finally, we have the SOAR that takes the action here. So in a traditional SOC scenario, a human has to open the SIM alert, decide what to do, make a determination whether it's a true positive or false positive. But at Bell Cyber, we've pre-programmed the muscle memory through automated playbooks. Instead of the human analyst needing to initiate a manual investigation, the AI enrichment and SOAR playbooks evaluate the context in real time, providing that visibility into the incident. Also, it doesn't need to send an email asking for permissions. Perhaps you need to reach out to a network admin to isolate a host. But using SOAR, we can network isolate the host using the EDR API to lock the laptop, potentially simultaneously hitting Enter ID to force a password reset and revoke active login sessions. So in this scenario, the total time elapsed is just 2 minutes and 14 seconds. This really shows how a unified stack using detection, analysis, automation, and containment, all working together to move fast enough to stop a threat before it spreads. Next, we have a real life example. But before getting into that, I want to frame why ransomware remains one of the clearest demonstrations of why modern EDR solutions matter. Most ransomware don't start with encryption. It starts with something small and easy to miss, like a phishing email, maybe a malicious attachment or script, a user action that creates the initial foothold. From there, the attacker moves quickly. As we saw, it can be as fast as 51 seconds. What matters here is not whether the file is known to be malicious, but whether the activity on the endpoint looks abnormal, deviating from that baseline. Are we seeing suspicious process execution, rapid file modifications, encryption-like behavior? Activity that doesn't clearly align with the normal user or system behavior? This is where legacy AV struggles. If the malware is polymorphic, for instance, constantly changing its hash, a signature-based tool may never catch up. On the other hand, modern EDR, it doesn't have its full focus on the signature because it also focuses on the behavior and the intent. It can identify suspicious encryption patterns, isolate the host, and trigger response actions before the threat spreads. And that is the real business value here. The goal is not just to detect ransomware eventually, it's to stop it fast enough such that you minimize the blast radius, avoid broader outages, reduce recovery costs, and limit the impact to the business. Now, let's look at what that actually looks like in practice. So here we see an adversary using a non-traditional virus. They're using what's called an AI-generated polymorphic strain. What this does is it changes the file hash every few seconds. It's exactly the kind of threat that exposes the weakness of legacy antiviruses. If your control is waiting to match a known signature, you're already behind. So the threat, when it lands on the file share, and it immediately begins behaving like ransomware. So what matters here? Not the file name, not the hash, but the intent. The behavior engine, in this case, we've seen this on Defender or CrowdStrike, detected a process attempting to overwrite thousands of file headers at a rapid speed no human or business application would ever generate. The endpoint platform detected the behavior, killed the process, isolated the host, and stopped the threat from spreading further in the environment. But containment is only the first step. Because this environment is integrated with other security solutions, our response can go further. Perhaps we want to initiate rollback actions to restore the affected files. We can also use SOAR to extract behavior pattern and push a broader block across the environment to prevent the same type of activity from executing somewhere else. This is especially important because we've seen this type of behavior across environments running different endpoint tools, and the attack itself never really cared whether it was running CrowdStrike, Defender. The objective is really always the same: encrypt quickly and spread where possible. In a CrowdStrike environment, the behavioral AI can flag the suspicious encryption pattern. The Bell Cyber SOAR workflow can validate it against wider threat intelligence pools and trigger a network isolate action almost immediately. In Defender, for Endpoint from Microsoft, attack disruption can identify the same encryption attempt. And again, our integrated playbooks can isolate the host, trigger rollback actions where available, and revoke the user's Enter ID access to cut off both identity and endpoint-based risk. As you can see, the business value here is huge. It's not just about stopping malware, it's about preventing multi-million-dollar ransomware events and avoiding days, perhaps even weeks of operational downtime, shrinking what could have been a major crisis into a small, manageable incident. So instead of recovering an entire environment, organizations deal with one contained endpoint and just a short operational ticket. So let's take a look at a few more attack scenarios that perhaps you're likely to encounter, or maybe you've already encountered these. And we'll show you how EDR defends against each. In the first scenario, we have the ransomware Lockbit 3.0 variant. So first, the ransomware, specifically Lockbit 3.0, remains one of the most active threat groups targeting Canadian organizations. The typical attack chain is a phishing email into credential theft, into lateral movement via legitimate admin tools, and then mass encryption. This often can be compressed into a 30 to 60-minute window from that initial access. The behavioral indicators that EDR catches, for instance, volume shadow copy deletion, is one of the most reliable detections. No legitimate process should be deleting volume shadow copy service snapshots at scale. Combined with mass file write operations, particularly changing file extensions, this is a near certain ransomware indicator. Sentinel-1 and their autonomous AI in this specific scenario detected volume shadow copy service deletion patterns, correlated that with PowerShell process spawned from a phishing document, and triggered automatic isolation and rollback, all within 90 seconds of the attacker beginning the encryption. What this resulted in was 0 files permanently encrypted, no ransom to pay, full recovery within 2 hours, and avoiding an average of 3 weeks for ransomware recovery as the industry standard. What's the business value here? 0 in ransomware payments, 0 in recovery costs, and just 2 hours of downtime versus 3 weeks on average. That's the risk reduction story that your organization wants to hear. In the next scenario, we have a living off the land or LOLBIN abuse. So as mentioned earlier, signature-based attacks or malware aren't the only way attackers are able to compromise systems. Sometimes they use legitimate Windows tools, PowerShell, Cert Utility, Microsoft HTML apps, and others. So there's no malicious file hash to detect. In this scenario, we have a spear phishing email, which delivers a malicious macro. The macro calls PowerShell, which then uses Cert Util to download an encoded payload from a legitimate storage service. Microsoft HTML apps is then used to execute this. Every tool in this chain that I've just mentioned is legitimate and signed by Microsoft. So what we're looking at is not the individual tools and the behaviors on their own, but rather the sequence of behaviors. And this is exactly what CrowdStrike's AI indicators of attacks was able to catch. Office spawned PowerShell with an encoded argument, PowerShell making an outbound connection, Cert Util being used as a downloader, and Microsoft HTML applications executing in an unusual context. All of these together were flagged as a malicious command chain, and CrowdStrike was able to kill the process tree at stage 2 before the payload was even able to execute. So in this case, we see the value of behavioral AI over signatures. Traditional tools would never have seen the legitimate processes as being used with a malicious intent and done nothing. Whereas CrowdStrike and EDR solutions stopped it before a single malicious action was able to be completed. A real example of this was at a mid-market financial services firm. This exact attack pattern was used to compromise the business. As I mentioned, CrowdStrike was able to block it at stage 2, and if they had succeeded, resulted in $2.5 million in regulatory fines and breach costs, saving the company a lot in recovery costs. The last scenario is an identity attack, or an attacker in the middle phishing attack. It's one of the most common attack vectors targeting enterprises in 2026. These attacks bypass MFA, and they use a transparent proxy to sit between the user and a legitimate login page. The user, being tricked into thinking this is a legitimate login page, enters their credentials, puts in their MFA code, and the attacker captures the resulting authenticated session token and uses it to log in to the infrastructure. Standard MFA provides 0 protection against this type of attack. Now the attacker has an authenticated MT65 session. Their first move, set inbox forwarding rules to copy all emails to an external destination. This is often the precursor to business email compromise, monitoring financial discussions, impersonating executives, intercepting wire transfers. So how did Defender XDR catch this? Impossible travel detection flagged the same account logging in from Toronto and then from an Eastern European IP within minutes. A new inbox forwarding rule was created simultaneously. The session token came from a device that had never been seen before. Defender correlated all three attack signals into a single high confidence incident and triggered attack disruption, suspending the account, revoking active logon sessions, resetting passwords, all in less than 5 minutes. The wire transfer that had been targeted for nearly $1 million resulted in the total cost of to the business being zero, because the attack was disrupted before the attacker had any time to act on the email access they had obtained. So with that, I'll hand it over back to Talha to recap our integrated defense stack and the business value you achieve from it.
Perfect. Thank you for that, Janart. Now, before I do that, I want to talk about AI and how major EDR vendors have moved beyond simple chatbot style AI bots to utilizing agentic AI. And this has allowed the EDR tools to enhance their investigation, reasoning, actions, and in some cases trigger advanced workflows without any human oversight to secure the system and contain the threat. Now, Microsoft is doing this through Security Copilot. It is a growing set of security agents embedded within their Defender tech stack and the broader Microsoft security stack. CrowdStrike is pushing this forward with their Charlotte AI. Charlotte Agentic SOAR is available for automated actions. Again, these are designed to combine AI reasoning with orchestration and response capabilities. Sentinel-1 is also positioning their Purple AI. They're utilizing it as an AI-based security analyst for investigation, for response, for workflow automation. And while Palo Alto is combining their Cortex XDR with their XOR playbook and utilizing the XIM platform for correlating against log data, they have recently acquired Protect AI. And again, the objective is to automate response across the SOC environment. Now, the important point here is that AI in EDR is no longer just helping analysts summarize the alerts, right? It has evolved beyond that. It is now helping prioritizing the incidents, correlating all the telemetric log data, the signals, and recommending the next steps. So what it does, it allows us to accelerate the containment process. Now, in some platforms, utilization of AI means translating natural language into investigations. In other platforms, it means auto triage, machine speed orchestration, or autonomous handling of repetitive tasks. Now, while each vendor has their own unique AI capabilities, what we have done here at Bell Cyber is we have taken a vendor agnostic approach. We have built our own AI framework, our own mesh architecture. We have integrated various security tools that are critical for SOC operations to deliver a cooperative ecosystem, which we call security as a service, which allows us to incorporate autonomous SOC functionality. We'll talk about that in the next few slides. But all that I talked about, right, the shift from reactive operations to more predictive and autonomous SOC model, the utilization of AI integrated into your tech stack. The autonomous SOC is designed for that purpose, right? The autonomous SOC is AI. It utilizes orchestration and automation to automate repetitive tasks. uh, it is designed to handle incidents in minutes rather than hours, right? While the analysts still remain in control. So the takeaway should not be which vendor has the best AI slogan, right? The real takeaway is that the EDR market is moving towards AI powered investigation. The EDR market is incorporating AI for machine speed response, right? And at Bell Cyber, we have operationalized this capability. We have done it in a unified mesh architecture. We have integrated MDR, SIM, SOAR, vulnerability management, threat intelligence to actually drive containment outcomes rather than building better looking dashboards, right? Now, our internal positioning is consistent on the point that AI does the busy work. Analysts, they run the threat hunting and the impact analysis. They define the use cases for triggers and decision making. So the analyst role has evolved. The goal is centralized, proactive security operations that can reduce time to detect and time to contain. Now, with that said, I'm going to move into why this integration is the differentiator, right? Everything we talked about today, the behavioral AI in EDR, the SIM correlation, the SOAR automation, these are the capabilities that are genuinely powerful, right? They're the most powerful when they are integrated, not when they're running independently in silos. The challenge most organizations are facing isn't that they don't have access to great tools. It's the expertise, it's the 24/7 coverage, it's the operational discipline to make those tools work together at machine speed. That's the gap Bell Cyber's MDR service fills, right? Now, if you look at the stack, at the base, we have the EDR agents. The EDR agent in our world is vendor agnostic. So you could be running CrowdStrike, you could be running Microsoft, you could be running SentinelOne. It doesn't matter. We don't force a rip and replace. We integrate with what you have. Above that, we have the SIM. Again, same concept. Microsoft Sentinel could be your primary platform. 40SIM could be your primary platform. Splunk could be your primary SIM tool. It doesn't matter as long as it is ingesting all the log data and is ingesting telemetric data from your EDR. Next, we have the SOAR layer. Again, Bell Cyber maintains a library of pre-built playbooks for the most common response scenarios. We have the capability to respond, well, detect and respond to ransomware, lateral movement, credential compromise, data exfiltration attempts. And these playbooks are customized for your environment during the onboarding. We then have the MDR or the 24/7 Canadian SOC team. These are experienced analysts who are doing the active threat hunting. They're reviewing what the automation escalates. They are providing the human judgment layer that AI and automation can't fully replace yet. But we're getting there, right? When something complex and ambiguous comes through, the analysts are then engaged around the clock. And we wrap it up with complete XDR, make sure that we have network traffic telemetry, identity activity, cloud workloads, giving you a single correlated view of an attack that may have touched multiple vectors. Now, AI runs through every layer. It's not a separate product. It's the intelligence layer that makes every component work faster, more accurate, more capable of operating at that machine speed that modern threats require. Now, let me shift gears for a moment and talk about how to frame this for your executive and board stakeholders, because the security case and the business case are different conversations. The security case is we need behavioral detection, we need AI-powered investigation, automated containment. That resonates with technical audience. The board wants to know, what does this cost? What does it protect? And what's the risk if you don't do it? So on the risk side, without modern EDR and a managed response capabilities, IBM data says that you're looking at an average of 197 days to detect and another 69 days to contain it. That's a breach that's been progressing for nearly 9 months before you stopped it. right? And at a cost of $4.9 million. Now, without next generation tools and integrated solution, integrated EDR and MDR, detection is in hours, in days, in months. With EDR and MDR, it's in seconds. Containment is in minutes, and the breach cost is reduced by a significant amount, right? The comparison isn't cost of security versus no cost. It's the cost of security versus cost of a breach that you were 9 months away from catching, right? There's also a cyber insurance angle. Cyber insurance providers are requiring specific security controls. EDR is on almost every carrier's required control list. Organizations with documented EDR, SIM, incident response, tabletop exercises, they get better, meaningful premiums. And for organizations in regulated industries, right, you have the compliance angle. Well, CyberStack supports PIPEDA, SOC 2, PCI, ISO 27000, NIST. We have an audit-ready logging and reporting model built in. So to simply put, modern EDR isn't just a cost center, it's the cheapest insurance policy you'll ever buy when you price it against the risk it mitigates. And let me close with this. Organizations that are winning on cybersecurity in 2026 are not the ones with the most security tools. It's the one that have moved beyond reactive security, beyond waiting to be notified, and have incorporated automated response, automated containment. 5 minute containment isn't a fantasy. We have shown you the timeline, we have shown you the technology, we have shown you the integration approach. The question is whether your current security posture can get you there. And if you want to find out, right, call upon us to do an MDR assessment. We will identify where the gaps are. Request a demo of our integrated mesh architecture with an AI framework that powers our autonomous SOC. You can reach out to understand the integration and the workflows, the playbooks that ties the SIM and the SOAR and the ASOC and the integration with an EDR to achieve that 5 minute containment for attack vectors. With that said, let me take a look at the questions. I see that a few of them came in, so bear with me for a quick second. So I have a question here. We already have an EDR. What does Bell Cyber add? Well, it's great that you already have an EDR. Today, I would expect all organizations to invest in an EDR, but without a managed response capability, which means that your team must monitor and respond around the clock, right? So the MDR service, 24/7 SOC service, it fills that gap, right? So plus we add threat hunting on top, we bring the automation that allows you to achieve that subpar 5 minute containment as part of your response strategy. Another question was, how does this work for our OT environment? Well, there's a specific use case requiring careful EDR deployments, right? Not all EDR agents are suitable for OT. I know CrowdStrike and SentinelOne, they both have OT specific deployment guidance. We can advise you on air-gapped and monitoring only approaches for sensitive OT environments or ICS environments. All right, let's see if there are any more questions. Guys, feel free to put it in the Q&A section. There's another one. From your experience, what's the hardest part for companies when trying to respond to threats quickly? See, the biggest challenge is getting the approvals to incorporate automation. IT leaders are still haunted with horror stories of the past where an IPS signature uh, caused an outage because it blocked legitimate traffic. That was 15 years ago. We don't enable automation just for the sake of automating a response. We carefully look at the attack vectors. We uh, build the playbook to only contain a threat when there is high confidence, which means that we have multiple indicators of compromise. We have correlation confirmation that it is in fact a true positive event of concern, right? Another question was, how do teams balance automation and human involvement when trying to contain threats in under 5 minutes, especially since some situations still need a human in the loop? That's a great question. And when we talk about situations that need human in the loop, they need human in the loop after the fact. What I mean by that, if I have a critical server and that server is running critical business applications, I have evidence that the system is compromised by a ransomware. Do you want me to first spin up a conference bridge, get all the relevant business owners, application owners on the call, and seek their approval before I contain that asset? Or do you want me to contain first, then reach out to the business owners, application owners, make them aware of the situation, understand the business impact, and initiate BCPDR, right? So human involvement in containment is not something we have the time to consider because attacks are moving at machine speed. Human involvement is after the fact. Contain, let's now figure out what the business impact, operational impact is. And you should be able to test these as part of your tabletop scenarios to say, we have contained an a critical system. How would the business react to that? Are we prepared to manage business continuity and business operations if that were the case, right? So run tabletop exercises. Reach out to us if you want to schedule tabletop exercises led by professionals at Bell Cyber. And we can help you understand your capabilities in how efficiently you respond to those threats. All right, with that said, if there are no more questions, I'd like to thank all the participants for their time. I hope you're able to get some insightful message based on our webinar. If you have any questions, if you want to reach out, please feel free to connect with us. You can find us on LinkedIn and connect to one of our advisors through that. Thank you, folks, for your time. Have a wonderful rest of your day.